So I was having a conversation with a group just the other day about poverty and wealth, and how wealth is created, and why people are poor. And so my essential question, my initial question was, why is it that people are poor? Like, why are people poor? And so, in trying to examine that phenomenon, and talk about it, what I did was I flipped the question. And so I asked the question, why are people rich? And typically what people say is that their parents, their parents are rich, that they inherited, that they made good decisions, that they got an education, and so forth and so on. So that's what people tell me about why people are rich. And so then I asked this follow-up question, were they born that way? Like, as a small baby, did they go to school and make good choices then? How did they come to understand the world? And the response typically to that question is that no, they weren't born that way. Now, they may have had an inheritance set aside for them, or some things that they could expect to get once they become of age, but as a small baby, drooling and crying and teething and dispensing in diapers, they necessarily did not do anything or be anything. And so the follow-up question is, then how do the rich become rich? They are taught to be rich. So let's go back to my initial question. How is it, or why is it, that poor people are poor? And it's so funny because I get these answers like they've made bad choices, that they're lazy, that they live in the ghetto, that they want to live off the system. When in fact, the reason that poor people are poor is the same reason that rich people are rich, because they've been taught to be poor. Now, some people say, Andre, is kind of harsh. I didn't try to teach my kid to be poor. But what I would like to offer is all the paradigms that I have, the basis for my paradigms came from my parents. And where did my parents get their paradigms that they taught me? From their parents. And my grandparents got their paradigms from their parents. And so all the time, we're passing down these ways of thinking and being and looking at the world from generation to generation to generation. Now, I don't know if you've ever done this, but have you ever made a copy of a copy? What does that look like? Or have you made a copy of a copy of a copy that was a copy? Yeah, you start to get these distorted images. Now, you can still kind of make stuff out, but it's become very foggy and fuzzy. And so my basic answer to, well, how do you end poverty? How do you engage people so that they're not necessarily using the system? Or how do we get people off of welfare? Well, one of the things that we have to do is have a conversation that moves from blaming people, your fault, your fault, your fault, and accepting responsibility as a system that in some ways we haven't done the right thing with people. And so how do we get people out of poverty? We educate people out of poverty. We teach them about assets. We teach them about liabilities. And so, for example, is a house an asset or a liability? So in my grandfather's day, a house would have been an asset. Why? Because he had a 30-year mortgage, he paid it off in 15, and so the rest of that is just straight money in his house bank. Unfortunately, in our modern times, how many years do we typically stay in a house? We're fortunate if we stay 5 or 7 years, and then what happens in those 5 or 7 years? We typically liquidate that mortgage, or we add dollars to that mortgage to get a bigger and better house. And then after that 5 to 7 years, what do? We typically get another mortgage and expand, our liabilities to get an even larger house. So in current America, what we do is we don't buy houses. We actually end up buying liabilities. We buy mortgages. And we're never talking about how do I get necessarily a better house, but we want to get a better mortgage. And so when we talk about assets and liabilities, we have to help poor people in particular, but people in general, think about how they can be more productive in society by changing how they think. If I can help people change how they think, I can change how they live. My name is Andre Koen. Till next time. Bye.